Welcome back to the Options Insider's exclusive coverage of the 2010 Options Industry Conference. Coming up next, we have a panel session entitled Specialization, the World of Social Marketing. The panelist for this session is Mark DeMassimo from DJO Brands. Thanks again for downloading this session, and be sure to stay tuned to theoptionsinsider.com and Options Insider Radio for more exclusive coverage of the 2010 Options Industry Conference.
Good morning. I am particularly pleased to be introducing the next session. As Malcolm Gladwell discussed yesterday, information is available to us in quantities like we've never seen before and being delivered through a variety of new mediums and platforms. The rise of social marketing is largely responsible for this growth in information and accessibility. And our next speaker, Mark DeMassimo, is at the forefront of this rapidly evolving discipline. Mark is the founder, CEO, and Chief Creative Officer of DJO, the Agency for a Social World. DJO's mission is to lead the integration of word-of-mouth, buzz, and social media strategies into the total marketing communications mix. Mark was featured in the best-selling book, Leadership Secrets of the World's Most Successful CEOs, and is a familiar face on CNBC, CNN, Bloomberg, and Fox News. Mark, thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm not going to speak to you today as a social media expert. Honestly, I don't really believe in the category. I think it's too early for there to be social media experts. And anyway, I think just hearing about social media isn't going to be the most helpful thing for you today. So I'm not going to talk about how Facebook has more citizens than any country on earth, or how more people have played Farmville that have even joined Twitter. I'm not going to talk about how quick things have, the quick uptake. I'm not going to talk about how I got my last 3 clients, my biggest clients, through LinkedIn connections or any of that. All that's interesting, but I think we all have access to this thing called the World Wide Web, and so you know about all that. I want to speak instead as somebody who's spent the last, 30 years with an obsession about trying to figure out how things grow, how they take off, why some things catch on and why other things don't. And then for the last 25 years or so, I've had to solve problems about how to get things to take off, to grow, how to win in the marketplace, in this category and outside of this category. I'm not going to stand up here and do an advertisement for myself, but if you know the Island DCN, Ed Nickel, Instinet, iNet, Thinkorswim, Options Express, you know my work, or at least you know the tribe that I've hung out with. So how do things take off? And what's changed? And I want to talk to you today about a change that I've noticed in the context in which we're all competing. And I want to talk about how that can impact the growth of this industry that we all rely on. So I want to talk to you about reigniting options industry growth in a social world. How are we going to do that? So let me see if I can get this thing to work. Not so much. Is there a place I'm supposed to aim it? It's working? It's not working here. Okay. You see, I have a monitor up here, but the monitor's not working. All right, well, the first thing I want to tell you about is I believe that it is a social world, that it's a social world. Now, we talked about that. Yesterday about how there's more information than ever before. We've got information overload. We talked about a lot of the symptoms of this change. I want to talk to you about what I mean when I say it's a social world. So let's talk about how we all evolved. I assume there may be 2 or 3 creationists here, but I'm going to talk about evolution. I'm going to talk about our common ancestor, Lucy. Lucy lived 3.5 million years ago. She was about 3.5 feet tall, and she got all the information that she needed to live, either by her instincts or by people in her clan, people that she knew. She didn't move very far in her life, just enough to scrounge and gather and survive. Up until about 1900, the year 1900, people pretty much learned about the things they needed to live in exactly the same way. For the most part, they didn't, until after 1850, there weren't really trains. Most people died very close to where they were born. Most people didn't travel for medical care. Most of the products that people consumed were created in their local communities. And as specialties and as expertise developed, you went to see your local banker about banking, you went to see your local doctor about your problems, or more likely, your barber, who also did surgery. And until the late 19th century, there were very few brands. There wasn't mass production, right? There were very few brands of products that you could buy outside of your town. So we evolved getting our recommendations and our information from people we know. We knew. Our ancestors knew. So that's the way we work. And yet the 20th century was a real aberration. And this is the century during which my industry, the advertising and propaganda industry, grew up, right? From 1900 to 2000. 1900, we have radio. So suddenly, people are sitting around this box, and the box talks to them. The box aggregates audiences. The box makes it efficient for mass producers to mass advertise, because we're all around the box. We're transfixed by the box. In 1941, we have the commercial introduction of television, which is interrupted by World War II. Therefore, some cities get it far ahead of other cities, and you can read about the variable results of the introduction of television, but I won't talk about that today. But by about 1954, 54% of households in the United States had television sets. By 1999, 98%, and today, 99% of households have television sets. And the average has three television sets per household. I don't know if they're all plugged in. I don't know if they all have cable, but they're there. So during that 20th century, with radio and television primarily, and by the way, the first century with general literacy in the richer countries. So you might think, well, there were newspapers before that. Well, guess what? Rich white men could read for the most part. That's it. That's it. You have public education in the 20th century, so people are reading newspapers, they're listening to the radio, and they're watching television. And for the first time, and probably for the last time, advertising becomes the most efficient way to make something catch on, because you can aggregate an audience like nothing else with these mass media. So that's the advertising world. I talk radio to Facebook. Facebook was introduced in 2004 just for Harvard students. By 2006, it became available to everybody else. And as I said in the beginning, you know the rest. The rest is history. So I could have chosen email. I could have chosen a lot of things. I don't know. We're too close to really know when the beginning of the social world was. So I'll choose Facebook. I'll choose Facebook for today. Facebook's a pretty good, pretty dramatic example. Now, the change is that the way things take on is different. The way things catch on is different. Advertising is no longer the most efficient way for most advertisers, even advertisers with incredibly deep pockets, to change the way the market behaves, to reach their market, to get their thing, to compete, to get their thing to catch on. It's no longer the most efficient way. I know this because I've been inside the problem while this has been evolving. And I can give you a lot of examples, a lot of evidences of this. Take Steve Jobs as an example, because this is one of the great myths of our time, and that doesn't mean it's not true. But Steve Jobs is one of the great sort of godlike myths of our time. He's up there on our Mount Olympus of innovators and of successful business people, right? Back at the beginning of the PC, the microcomputer, what do you want to call it? Revolution, I guess. Steve Jobs was obviously an innovative guy. He was a particular guy. He was sort of a tyrant aesthete. And he was viewed by the industry as just sort of brilliant and eccentric, but far from central. And Apple, while it was a successful company at the beginning, got there early, did interesting products, was far from an industry-dominating company. His values, user experience, design, insanely great products were just ahead of their time. The category then was about satisfying the need for PCs as quickly and as cheaply and as accessibly as possible. It was a gold rush. So, at the time, I was working with Ted Wade at Gateway. And the idea was to keep the price as low as possible, to make it as easy as possible to get a PC, and to make it as easy as possible to accept it. So most of the stuff we were working on at the time was, how do you talk to audiences that are afraid of PCs? How do we just pump out the PCs into a world that has seemingly an endless hunger for PCs? And here's this guy, Steve Jobs, who's talking about product experience and design and an insanely great experience. So, in other words, for most of the market, they were going from zero to any experience. It was already magic. It was just getting a PC on your desk that did word processing. It was magic. And he's saying, well, that's not magic enough. You people are idiots. It's got to be up here. Well, things have changed. He's still about the same things, but things have changed. What's driving the category is all of those things that Steve Jobs has been obsessed about all along. Because people have PCs. People aren't rushing out to replace their laptops, not because they need another laptop. Now it's all about the experience. And that's a huge change. And what I'm talking about here is the same sort of context change that's going on in this category, and in fact in the world we compete in. So we're in a social world now, and recommendations and what people say about you, what people learn about you and your products in their social networks, and I'm not just talking about those online social networks, but they're important, is the most important thing now. So what we have is, to put it in market terms, is a more efficient marketplace of information. We have a more efficient marketplace for information. Think how inefficient it was. Everybody living in their small town, almost nobody reading. Everybody getting their information from people that they grew up with. So if a company had a product, and then at the end of the 19th century, there were mass producers who sold products, Coca-Cola. If Coca-Cola poisoned people in California, the people in Arizona didn't know about it. They didn't know about it. It didn't matter in a way. It was a very, very slow transmission of information. And there were lots of opportunities to get in the way of information back then. Not so today. People said, be careful being Italian in Arizona. On my way out here, it's not even a law yet, right? Be careful being Italian. Don't get a tan in Arizona. A company, McNeil, has a product, Motrin. They sell a lot of that Motrin to moms. They did an ad. I thought the ad was funny, trying to empathize with mommies, and mommy bloggers, of course, a big part of their audience, talking about the pain of walking around with your kids in a sling, and empathizing and saying, if you look crazy, no wonder, with the things we do for our kids. And mommy bloggers were incensed. Within a few days, people were calling for boycotts of Motrin. The company tried to empathize. They got it a little wrong. They got between moms and their kids, something that you never do. This would not have happened 10 years ago. But now I'm starting to talk like a social media expert, so I'll go on. So we have a more efficient marketplace for information about experiences. Experiences are what mattered now. Why? Because this is the way it worked, and this is the way we're wired. We talk to people about our experiences. So we're competing, options trading is competing as an experience in the world against other experiences. So this should drive our innovation. What kind of an experience are we providing? Education has driven this category, but education is what we resort to when our experience is difficult, hard to get engaged with, not sticky. Education is work. I have 2 9-year-old twin sons. They can do things in the world of video games that I can't even imagine myself doing. Now, I learned to play the piano very well. I know about practice. I know that you can do miraculous things with practice. But they do things that I will never be able to do in this world of video games, and they never had a single class of education in playing video games. Not once. So I want to talk to you about what I'm calling the efficient experience market hypothesis. So all of us in this field know the efficient market hypothesis, right? It basically says that in an efficient, we'll forget the debate about whether the market's efficient or not. Of course, it's not perfectly efficient. I've ended it. But in an efficient market, value equals price. So let's see if I can make that happen. Yeah. So in an efficient market, value equals price. And so it can't predict the future because the future is already baked into the price. So in an efficient market, value equals price. So we now have a much more, and I'm not saying we have a perfectly, ideally efficient marketplace for experience. Of course we don't. But we have a dramatically more efficient market for experiences. So value more closely equals price. So the value that people bring to your experience and your success in your marketplace equals the quality of that experience, because people can communicate about the quality of that experience. So let's say compared to Forex trading or dealing with an investment advisor or whatever, we have an experience that, is a 5 on the scale of 1 to 10. Today, we could pour $300 million, $1 billion of advertising and to try to convince people otherwise. But they are going to connect with each other before they make a decision and after. And they're going to communicate. And they're going to know. And at the end of the cycle, where you stand in the marketplace, the rate of your growth, the size of the business is going to equal or very closely equal the quality of the experience. And so, we've learned, I've heard a lot of people allude to this over the last few days. And so we know now what we didn't know not that long ago, that it's not just about price. It's about when. It's about where. It's about how. It's about who. And then, of course, finally, it's about how much. These are the elements, or at least some of the elements of experience. So what this all adds up to is the experience that works best wins. So what works in a social world? Let's talk about that. My friend Dan Heath and I serve on the board of Rare Conservation. Rare Conservation is out there solving problems in the world. Let me try a story out on you for Rare Conservation. The poorest places on Earth, in the tropics, these are our collective lungs. They're our collective lungs and heart. They clean the air. They make our ecosystem go. We're polluting in our backyard, bad problem. Cutting down our trees, okay, not so good. Using paper versus plastic or whatever. The truth is, that the lungs are in the tropics. And what rare conservation does is it takes people from the poorest places, I mean, I'm talking $1 a week income, brings them to the U.S., gives them master's degrees training, sends them back to these poorest spots on Earth, and they organize the people to save the natural environment. So Dan and I are on this board, and we're working on this together. And this has got me sort of deeply into he and his brother's books. And he says, here's what he says about stories that stick. Because what you need in a social world is not a giant advertising campaign, but a story that sticks, an idea that sticks. So it's simple. It's simple. So, I don't know, I just tried one out on you. I'm learning. By all means, give me feedback later. The lungs of the world. I like that. It's unexpected. It's got to be unexpected. We need to evaluate. Let's say we want to create an innovation. There are innovations that we need to do in the industry. But you know what? Can we create some innovations that have story value? You can do this here. Some people talk about back testing. That had story value. Back testing, okay, that's interesting. Saturn launched itself by being built in Tennessee, not Japan or Detroit. And by not haggling. So simple innovation. What was the story value of the iPod? 1,000 songs in your pocket. Simple, elegant. Concrete. It needs to be concrete. So we're masters of abstraction here. We have to be to be in this industry. But people love concrete. Credentialed. There has to be credibility. And that credibility has to wash out in this social world where people can talk to each other. Emotional. I was talking to somebody very smart yesterday about this stuff who said, what we're trying to do is create emotional reasons to get people to make rational decisions. There is no motivation without emotion. There's no motivation without emotion. So we need to develop that other side of our brain. Why do people get involved with this experience? There's an emotional reason. There's a motivation. Maybe it's about their self-image. In some cases, I can tell you it is. I know when we talk to traders, self-image is huge. In some cases, it's about the excitement they feel. And some of our products are obstacles to those feelings and to that self-image. So we have to be aware of them. And then it has to be a story. What's the story? I have this up in the wall of my office. What's the story? The most important question. If we're going to go through all the work and do all the investment and take all the risk to create something new, if no one's going to talk about it because there's no story value in it, don't waste the time. Unless you're mandated to do it, don't do it. Focus on things that are better stories. So this is an acronym, spells success. I don't know what Dan was leaving the last S off for, but I'd like to suggest that if we want to think about ideas that are made to not just stick, but made to spread, and we want to know what makes a sticky story social. So sticky means people imbibe it, they believe it, they want to talk about it. But what really makes it social? I would add one. I'd say it has to be simple, it has to be unexpected, it has to be concrete, it has to be credentialed, it has to be emotional, it has to be short. It has to be short. The tropics are the lungs of the world. Protect your lungs. You can't live without them. Has to be a story. So there you go. That's success. Simple, unexpected, concrete, credentialed, emotional, short, story. Why am I talking so much about stories? Because stories make the world go. People live by stories. People try to model their lives after stories. Think about it sometime. I'm sure many of you are leaders, so you already think this way. You already know what stories and myths drive you in your life. You know why you get out of bed when your head hurts and go and fight the fight again. You know that it's not just because you're built to do it, but because you've imbibed some stories that you live by. This is what motivates people. This is what our products and brands can do. This is what this industry can do. That's not moving. I'm having another technical problem. I'm quite convinced this is not the last slide. I can talk without them. Okay. This wasn't the story I was working on. Okay. So here's just one example. So a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, my agency, Digo, was working with Thinkorswim Group. Thinkorswim Group is comprised of a broker, Thinkorswim, and an education company, InvestTools. So I was going on vacation down in Charlottesville, Virginia, where my parents live and where I have some friends. Simultaneously, the market was tanking, was falling apart. There was panic and all of that. And it occurred to me on the trip down, we drive in the minivan, that E-Trade was advertising hundreds of millions of dollars a year. It's so easy, a baby can do it. It's so easy, a baby can do it, and yet slaughter, absolute slaughter out there. And, InvestTools doesn't have $300 million to spend on advertising. So the thought occurred to me, this is our time. This is our time to say, no, it's not that easy. You need education. Education's a value. Yes, you ought to spend $8,000, $15,000, $25,000 getting educated through InvestTools. So while I was on vacation, I took my son Jack. He's 3 now, so it shows how long ago that was. Took my son Jack to my sister's house. We used her bedroom, which looked eerily like the backdrop for the E-Trade commercials. Got Jack in front of the camera, 7 minutes for two different sittings, and we had a director try to get Jack to act like the E-Trade baby. And you know what? He couldn't. He needed trading education. It took the entire 60-second commercial to get him to touch the keyboard. And throughout the commercial, and he's my own kid, the director would have liked to make him cry. I wasn't going to let that happen. But he did sink from, kind of being tall in his chair down to just sort of, feeling like a lot of new options traders feel. Lost, confused, not knowing what button to push, learned helplessness. We ran this just a few times. We combined it with a PR campaign where we were going to give free educations to the first 401, 401k, right? 401 babies born in the year. Very inexpensive offer since they have to be 18 in order to take advantage of them. And we not only did we get loads of press, but we were striking exactly the right tone in this debate. It does take education. Not unimportantly, the entire front page of Google results for InvestTools changed over from some unfortunate stuff to all about this principled stand that InvestTools took in a creative and interesting way. And from what I heard from a few E-Trade people, they kind of liked it too. So what are the implications for the options industry in all of this? So I would just ask some questions, and I think these are questions that could drive innovation. Could it be more simple? I'm talking about the experience. Someone said transparent. Transparent is an element of simplicity, I think, from experience. You want to feel that it's simple. It can't just be simple objectively. There is no objectively in the experience realm. Could it be more simple? Could it be more unexpected? Could it be more concrete? Could it be more concrete? I ask myself, why can't options trading be like a best-selling video game? Why does it have to be so abstract? Why couldn't it be more like that? Could it be more credentialed? Could it be more? Could the way we pitch this be more emotional? Can we create more emotion? Could our story be shorter, clearer? Could everyone in this room have exactly the same elevator speech and have it be as short as a line about why this industry should grow, why it should grow here, so that we all have a story that we can tell about what we're doing in the world? So, how sticky is the options trading experience? Are we measuring that? Can we fix that? Can we design it to be more juicy? So juicy is a key concept from the video game industry. What juicy means is emotionally rewarding, viscerally rewarding. And they talk about what's the optimum level of juiciness that this experience should have. It's possible for something to be too juicy. I'll give you an example. So it's viscerally, emotionally rewarding. So if we had some sound with this, you would have heard a really, really neat sort of pop fizzle that came up with that word juicy. But think of the Wii. Think of the Wii. The Wii is a breakthrough in juiciness. The controller vibrates. It makes you feel like you're moving in space when in fact you're just controlling something on the screen. You move through it in 3D. Things react. You can feel their reaction. You can hear sounds that make you feel you're moving things. Think of the iPhone and the way that interface works and the way it feels like it locks to your finger magnetically as you move it, like a physical thing, and it seems to have weight and mass as you try to get it to move. And yet it's just the right amount of weight and mass. So when you move something, it moves very fast and then it slows down the way objects do in space with a little bit of friction. It's juicy. It responds to you. How can we make what we do more juicy? And this is important because you need to consider the rise of the game generation. Because the game generation is driving a lot of this change. They're now as old as 35. People who grew up playing games. People whose measure of an experience has been formed by gaming. This is great for us. This is huge for this is huge for predicting future options industry growth because it's a game. And these are people who are trained to love games and to love the world of games. And what happens in the world of games? One is everyone can succeed. Some people just take longer to get up to another level. So there's confidence that if the experience in and of itself is rewarding, I can get there. The younger, in fact, they've been studied. The game generation has much more confidence that they will be able to master game-like, and they, by the way, they view life as a game, that they will be able to master things. So everyone succeeds, they just succeed at different levels. But the experience has to be compelling. The experience has to be compelling. So options trading is a game. Why can't options trading be more like a best-selling game? Take it to an absurd level. Why does the front-end interface have to feel like options trading? Why can't it feel like a game? Micropayments is big in games. People will pay for experience. People are spending huge money for little virtual assets in Farmville. More people play Farmville on Facebook than have joined Twitter. And we're talking 100 million people have joined Twitter. So just imagine. People will pay for experiences. How spready is the options trading experience? Can we socialize the product? Can we socialize the product? Can we add elements to the product that enable people to spread it and to spread the story and to spread the emotion of the product? So a company to watch is Capital. Lee Barba, who was the CEO of Investors and Thinkorswim, is on the board of Capital now. Gaspard Drusy, a French video game entrepreneur, founded this company with some investment experts. It's now a front end for, among others, TD Ameritrade. It is like a Wii, it's been called like a Wii for investment. It's a game front end for brokerage, basically. It's inspired by video game design. Watch Covestor. Covestor is a Digo client, so there's your disclaimer. Covestor and Cha-Ching allow, it's not quite short enough yet, We haven't worked with them that long. A world of great investors will let you automatically mirror their strategies trade for trade, all from the comfort and safety of your own account. So this is a whole new way. Like LinkedIn has replaced the resume, this is a whole new marketplace for investment management potential. Is our experience a viral phenomenon? Could it be more of a viral phenomenon? I want to add that I think that people will trade on social data. Look what happened to McNeil with Motrin. Look what happened to Arizona with this whole law. Imagine you could have a source of predictive chatter from the social media world, and you could model and predict how that would affect equity prices, how would it affect the prices that people could get for products. There are professors working on this. We at DIGO have a social world audit, and we've spoken to some of the largest, most reputation conscious firms about how they might use this. But ultimately, we're going to trade on this data, and this is an interesting source of innovation as well. So in the end, it's not about social media. Social media is just a very important tool to get a handle on. What it really is about is social marketing, and that's about stories that spread. It's about social technology. That's what's driving this. That's why what people used to call the global village is actually happening now, because I can use my instinct. I can operate the way I've evolved to operate. I can ask people that I trust for recommendations. But now, in this mobile world, it's not just the people that I see at the water cooler or who live in my tribe or are part of my clan. It's the people that are part of my network. It's about social intelligence. It's about social data. It's about social integration. How do we integrate this? How do we, decide what's important and what's not important and where to focus? That's why I'm not up here telling you you've got to have Twitter accounts and Facebook. You've got to do in all of these channels. That's part of the problem. Those are opportunities. They're not mandates. How do we focus and integrate? It's about social strategy, ultimately. About designing, building, and promoting for a social world. Designing, building, and promoting for a social world. So use that as a filter and go back and look at Steve Jobs' success and see how well it fits. Designing, building, and promoting for a social world. So if I like to summarize to make sure I have one thought. Here's my one thought. All of us, this industry, competes and will compete in a social world. I truly believe that this is the rest of our careers. We're competing in this context of a social world.
Mark's kindly agreed to take a few questions, so if we've got a few for him, please raise your hand and we have mics and we'll get them to you.
Hi, good morning. There's a huge difference in the options world between experience and education. If you do not educate people who are trading in this market, and also if you don't give them the realistic expectations for what they're doing in this market, you can call it a game, but you cannot hit the reset button. You're going to lose a lot of people if you couch this in the wrong way.
Well, I'll just start out by saying that I could not agree more with what you just said. And I want to be clear that I'm not anti-education. In fact, education is one of the key categories that I believe is growing and that DIGO focuses on, both in the options world and outside of it. My point is this, and this is as true in the classroom as it is in every other phase of life. Great, effective education, the ideal education experience doesn't feel like education. It feels like fun. It takes our natural curiosity, our natural fidgetiness, and inquisitiveness and playfulness, and it uses us to help us to learn. And I realize that that statement presents a design principle, but it's not enough, because I realize we can't talk about it as if it's just a game without risks. So I understand there's nuance in how we communicate it. And that word education may be the right word in terms of how we communicate it. But still, I believe it could feel more like a game. It could feel more fun. It could be a better experience.
Another question? No? Please thank me in joining Mark for those thought-provoking remarks.
And that's going to do it for this episode of Options Insider Radio. Be sure to visit www.theoptionsinsider.com for more episodes of this program, as well as breaking news from the options market, the latest articles and analysis from options experts, a wide variety of options education, and of course our discussion center where you can share your questions, comments, and insights with your fellow Options Insider users. While you're there, be sure to register for our monthly email newsletter, as well as our free email alert system. Our email alert system makes it even easier to stay up to date on the latest content from theoptionsinsider.com. Thanks again for listening. My name is Mark Longo, and I'll see you next time on Options Insider Radio.
Options Insider Radio was created by Mark Longo and produced by Gene Crotty. Options Insider Radio is a production of the Options Insider Incorporated, all rights reserved.